Hello, everybody. It's me, Fee, White Zulu, and I want to welcome you to another chapter of, another chapter of Okavango Diary. And I hope you're enjoying these readings. I want to welcome you all. And if you are enjoying them, please share or press the like button or whatever people do if they want to. I'm sorry, I'm a bit Diomaka today. I haven't got any words in front of me to read, so I'm doing this off the cuff. However, this is a greeting to you all and a welcome, and I hope that you enjoy these chapters that I'm reading out. They go out twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, if all goes well. And enjoy them, and thank you so much for listening to them. Share them around. Thank you, and goodbye. I have already had some really narrow escapes with that mean bull elephant, while shining my torch on him so that Oscar can chuck a stone at the beast to move him on. He's charged me, and I've had to run for my life and slip into a narrow gap between the two pilots' huts, where he can't reach me with his long tusks. If I wasn't quick enough, I would simply be a grease spot on the side of the wall. It's an eerie feeling as he probes me with the tip of his trunk, trying to grab at me as he would a branch of leaves. Elephants' trunks are very dexterous, and I pull my dressing gown closer to me, tying up the cord tightly so there are no loose ends for him to drag me out with. I crouch there, wedged in, hardly daring to breathe, while he pokes around, and I can feel his breath on my face, actually blowing my hair about as he huffs at me in frustration. We have another large group of Japanese guests staying right now. Again, Kira had asked me to help with orientation, which I often did if a large group was coming in all at once. The final and most important warning was that they were never to leave the perimeter of the camp under any circumstances, day or night. The Japanese interpreter repeated this orientation talk to all his charges, or so we thought. But at first light, just as the Birchall's glossy starlings begin their dawn chorus, I hear people chattering. Groggily, I look out of my window to see all 10 Japanese visitors walking out of the camp in the direction of where I'd heard lions roaring just an hour beforehand. I grabbed my dressing gown and slippers and, still dragging them on, raced after them, shouting at them to stop. They were all festooned with cameras and other photographic equipment and were making so much noise that they didn't hear me at first. Finally, I caught up with them, grabbed the interpreter by the arm, and pointing to all the deep and fresh lion pug marks they were all standing on, tried to explain the danger they were in. These huge footprints still had sand trickling in, indicating that the lions had passed by just minutes ago. Ah, but we want to capture the sunrise for photographs, explained the puzzled interpreter. The others were all nodding and agreeing, gesticulating that now they were going to miss the sunrise from a spot over there, where they pointed to a slight rise, almost in the bush. It was almost tempting to let them get on with it and see what panned out. but they were my and Kira's responsibility while they were in the camp. Reluctantly and muttering darkly, they allowed me to herd them back to their respective rooms, where they would get nice hot coffee and fresh homemade rusks. Blow me down if the following morning, at almost exactly the same time, I heard whispering, and looking out of my window saw the same lot creeping now, so as not to wake me, and heading purposely in the same direction to take photographs of the sunrise. I knew that the lions had been around earlier, as I'd heard them calling again. I sighed and slowly put on my slippers, dressing gown, and dragged myself out to go and head them off again. What if I hadn't been such a light sleeper? Would the outcome have made national headlines? 10 Japanese tourists eaten by lions. I was so cross with them, so tired, that I was beyond caring what happened to them. Monday, 18th of August. I took some guests for a short walk and some birding, as their plane was leaving mid-morning and there was no time for them to have an excursion. Outside the camp, just a few yards from the hostess's hut, we came across very fresh, huge, heavy lion pug marks in the sand, going in both directions. I decided to cut our walk short. It was just as well. One of the ground staff came back from Moxa, the manager's cottage, a little further away, over the wooden pole bridge, to say that he had just seen 2 big male lions lying in the shade of the trees at Moxa, in the very same direction in which I and my little party of guests were strolling. So we made a hasty U-turn and went to see how our laundry was done in the bush. Mark radioed from Tsaro at lunchtime to say that a leopard had just strolled across their front lawn. There's no more news now. It's getting very hectic, and head office has booked 2 guides into both Fred and my pilot's huts for 2 nights. I have the choice of going into Moxa with the 2 lions or sleeping on Kira's sofa. It didn't take much to decide. The hostess's hut is far bigger and more luxurious than my lowly pilot's hut, with a tiny sitting room complete with sofa. Best of all, it is a lovely, big, deep bathtub instead of the cramped little showers the pilots have. There's no mosquito netting on the windows, but a big mozzie net hangs over the bed to stop the mosquitoes from carrying you off. Finally, head office has flown up another water filter, so we are back to normal until an elephant steps on it again. I can go back to drinking out of the tap. Hooray! Tuesday, 19th of August, the worst yet here at Kugana. We have 20 guests, again, 2 in our little pilot's huts. Half the guests are Italian with hardly a word of English. The other half are a clannish group of Americans who don't want to mix with anybody. We are 26 for lunch, which goes on for 2 hours now, as people are flying out at midday and need an early lunch. Others are flying in at 1:30 and need a late lunch. Poor Leah is running around from 12 till 2:30, just relaying the place settings. Some of them don't want to get up from the table, and Kira is ceaselessly, I can't say it, ceaselessly tearing about, pouring more and more drinks as they demand them. One of the Italian women entertained us by sunbathing all afternoon and cooling off by running into the sprinklers. All she was wearing was a microscopic tanga bikini. Kira kept asking Fred when he was going off for his afternoon rest. Suddenly he had lots to do in the office, as it has the best view of the sprinklers. Wednesday, 20th of August. I spent the night in the owner's cottage, as there are still lions at Moxa. This is absolute luxury compared to Pilot's too, with a lovely view over the water. It's a full moon, and all night I hear the distinctive sawing cough of a leopard carrying across the mirror-like delta. Also hyenas are calling, hippos grunting, and black-backed jackals howling at the moon. It's quite an eerie sound. We are still chock-a-block. A new problem has developed with the guests who are leaving after lunch, refusing to move out of their mesasas in order to allow the guests who are arriving to move in. There is no time for the room staff to get in, clean the rooms and change the sheets. They have worked like dogs anyway and now have to work through their rest periods as well, even though we have offered the outgoing parties our own rooms to use during the morning. These are the same people who talk over their sundowners so much about their concern for the poor, underpaid, overworked local women who deserve a better life. Liberal hypocrites. I feel like strangling them. The English couple have arrived from their Makoro trail. They are delightful people. He is Queen's Counsel at the Temple Bar in London, Oxford educated, quietly spoken, and a true gentleman. I had some misgivings when I launched this pair on a Makoro trail for 3 days, as it's really roughing it, and there is lots of walking and game tracking, using our Bushman tracker Kenny. The QC is completely pear-shaped and has a petite German wife who looks doll-like, as if she's popped out of a cuckoo clock. They loved every minute of it and weren't fazed by having to perch on a portaloo or shower under a bucket out in the bush. Kenny picked water lilies and made a necklace for the lady. I've just discovered that she's a doctor of medicine. Ishmael, the camp cook, made them waterblommetjie, water lily stew, which they said was delicious. During dinner, we had round the table the QC and his doctor wife, a lawyer from Texas, a thermonuclear physicist from Germany, a professor of geography at the London School of Economics, a young English barrister also from London, and an architect from New South Wales in Australia. Conversation, as you can imagine, was most erudite. The only one who tried to show off was the Texan lawyer. Actually, he and his wife had spent a couple of nights at Michael and Coral's Desure bed and breakfast establishment, the farm next door to New Forest, my home where I grew up and where my parents are still living. Thursday, 21st of August. Last night, I heard a commotion at 10 p.m., just as I was locking up the kitchen. Oscar had gone to switch the Jenny off at Moxa and walked into the 2 lions. They were lying in the dark in front of the Jenny. I heard shouting for help and running feet as he came racing back over the rickety bridge, then howls of mocking laughter from the guides, to whom he was shouting for help. Eventually the lions were scared off by the laughter, and Oscar managed to switch it off. Our old elephant, Saddam, is back. He spent the night knocking trees down in the staff village. Apparently the elephant that was shot at by hunters was a much smaller one. Our lions must have made a kill, and I heard them growling and munching at the carcass in the distance all night. Early this morning, baboons crept into the camp and again have been pulling swallows' nests off the wall at the back of our office. After our guests left on morning excursions, Fred took the 12-bore out and shot a big male baboon. He left the body propped up in a prominent place in the centre of the camp. The rest of the morning there were howls from the rest of the troop, but we shouldn't have any more trouble from them for a while. A spotted-necked otter was playing in the water a few feet away from the bar at lunchtime.
Hello everybody. Thank you so much for listening to my videos and my stories of my life. And I want to thank John Moslane for being what I call the sound engineer, but I'm sure there's a more professional word for it. However, faithful, and for 4 years now, I think, he has been here for me every Wednesday. Well, I think it's Wednesdays, but once a week to record 2 chapters of whichever book it is I'm reading. And without him, this couldn't be done. So a big thank you to John. Also, Sean van Vuren, we send the videos to him. Sorry, I'm not reading this. I'm just doing it off the cuff. And my brain is a bit tumor. And Sean uploads them to the YouTube channel where you can find them all in playlists. He does it beautifully. And I want to thank them both for all the help that they give me. Well, it's not help. They do everything for me. And it's a great asset. So also, I have a website called whitezulubook.com, obviously www in front of it, but you'll find it there. Quite easy to find. Johnny Clegg's called The White Zulu. Mine's called White Zulu. And you will find on my website, you'll find all kinds of photographs going way back to when my ancestors settled in the Cape, 1652. Well, not photographs of them, but descriptions. This photograph of my grandmother's wedding, and lovely, lovely photos of the farm we still own. My sister sent me a photograph this morning of the farm in midsummer, and she says how beautiful it's looking. I've had a lot of rain. So, just want to thank my helpers, John and Sean, to thank you all for listening, and also please share this with everybody else. Hit the like button and enjoy. Goodbye.